Welcome to my kitchen. Today's recipe is a fall favorite, stuffed peppers. I've made them a bit healthier by using brown rice and ground turkey. They're absolutely delicious and satisfying, and they're a meal in itself. One pepper has 563 calories and 37 grams of protein for those who are counting. I get started by cooking the rice. Everybody has their own way of cooking rice. This is just the way I do it. It works every time, so I stick with it. A cup of rice, 2 cups of water, a half a teaspoon of salt. You boil the water, you put the rice in the water, which is a perfect sound. I absolutely love that sound of the rice going into the water. You bring it back to a boil, you put the lid on it, tilt the lid just a little bit, and then you turn it down to a simmer. You cook it until all the water is gone, until you can't see it anymore. You turn the heat off, you put the lid back on all the way, and you let it set for 10 minutes. And it comes out fluffy and perfect every time. Okay, now that the rice is done, let's get started on our filling. And we want to start with some oil in a large skillet. Medium-high heat is perfect. Okay, we do want the pan rather hot because I do want to get a little bit of color on the onions. It brings out the sweetness to them and it gives them just that little almost like a brown butter nutty flavor to them. And next we're going to get our onions started. And we want them not real big, like 1/8 inch size pieces. That would be good to start with. We want to keep everything relatively the same size. We want our ground turkey, when that cooks, to be smaller pieces, our onions to be smaller pieces. So we want everything to stay relatively the same size. So we're going to peel the onion, get it sliced, and then chopped into pieces. And like I said, you do want to get a nice brown on them because it really helps bring out the sugar in these onions. These onions are sweet onions. I prefer using those in my cooking because they're not strong, but they do have that nice onion flavor to them. Get those done, and then we'll get our garlic ready to go. And wait for the pan to finish heating up. And there won't be a lot of garlic, just 2 cloves. Get those peeled and ready to go. Move the onions over a little bit, give us a little more room. Start the tomatoes. Now these are tomatoes from my garden. So we have a few spots that we have to cut out of them. But they were delicious. They were very sweet. And they can be a little bit larger than the onions because they are going to cook down and they'll get soft. So they can be a little bit larger. And I ended up using, it's about 2 cups of chopped up tomatoes. And if you'll notice, the oil is very liquidy now. It runs real easy. That means that it's plenty hot enough. We'll get the onions in there. Get them cooking. Continue with the tomatoes. Now, I did use a lot of tomatoes because they were small. But like I said, you do want about 2 cups of chopped tomatoes. And these were nice meaty tomatoes. They weren't all seeds or all of the juicy parts. They were nice meaty tomatoes. And see, we have a little bit of color on our onions. It didn't take long. Tomatoes are all done. We'll get our garlic in there. I like using the rasp because it gives you nice little tiny pieces of garlic. And that's why I use 2 cloves of garlic, because you don't use the whole clove. You use about maybe 3/4 of it. So between the 2 of them, you have just the right amount. And you don't want that to burn. So you want, just about a minute for that, because that will burn real easy. And then we're going to get our ground turkey in. And that's a pound of ground turkey. And salt and pepper. About a teaspoon of salt. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. And by putting that turkey in right away, you also stop the cooking of the garlic. Which is why you always want to have something ready to go in right after your garlic's done cooking, so it doesn't burn. And we want to get this broken up into smaller pieces. That's going to be a process that you're going to do throughout the cooking of this. Let it cook for a little while, break it up, let it cook for a little bit longer. It breaks up into smaller pieces each time. And we're going to let that cook for a while. And we're going to add some of our seasonings. This is Italian seasoning and just a little bit of extra oregano. And my oregano is ground. That's a teaspoon of oregano and a half a teaspoon of the Italian seasoning. And if you'll notice, we're getting nice juice in our pan. Give it a stir. And see, the pieces are breaking up a little bit easier, getting smaller. And now we can put our tomatoes in. This is an easy recipe. Has a lot of steps, but they are easy ones. There's nothing complicated about it. It just takes a little bit of time to get everything to come together. All right, now that our tomatoes are done, get our board cleaned up, and then we can start with our fresh herbs. And that's parsley, last bit of parsley from the garden. And take the bigger stems off. They have flavor in them. If you wanted to save them to make some soup stock, you could do that. But I like to take them off when I'm going to use them in something like this. And you want 2 tablespoons of the fresh parsley and then 2 tablespoons of the fresh basil. And you don't want real big pieces. And cut it up rather small. And I don't use the basil stems at all. They can be really tough sometimes, and I don't think they have a lot of flavor to them, especially this time of year. The end of the year, the stems get tougher. We just want the leaves on those. Fold it over and give it a good chop. The fresh herbs are so nice. They make such a big difference. And the nice thing is if you don't have a garden with herbs in it, or it's the middle of winter, you only need a little. So it's not real expensive if you wanted to buy some. And so I try to buy my ingredients when they're on sale. Got the turkey on sale, got the peppers on sale. Thankfully, rice is not real expensive. And I wanted just a little bit more tomato flavor, so I'm going to put in some tomato paste. And you really don't need to add any water at this point. There's plenty of like a little gravy in there from the turkey. So I just mix that up with the turkey juices. Give it a good stir, mix it around real good. You don't want this real runny either. This is not going to be like a loose sauce or anything. You want it rather not dry, but not too much moisture in there. Try to break up those bigger pieces once again. Get that tomato all around in there. Tomato should be pretty much cooked through now and soft. Like I said, there's a lot of steps. They're all easy steps, but there are a lot of steps to getting this recipe together. And now we can get our herbs in there. And I did turn the burner off. At this point, we're done cooking. And we'll get our rice in there. I did want to measure it just so I could keep track of the calorie count on it. And it ended up to be, it's like 2¼ cups of rice. And then we're going to get some cheese in there. And that's just the shredded mozzarella cheese. Nothing fancy, already shredded. And that's a cup of that. And we'll set the rest of that aside because that will go on top of the peppers when they're done. And now we want to give this a really good stir. You want it evenly distributed. You want the cheese all over. You want a nice, smooth blend of everything. Like I said, it shouldn't be runny at all. Nice stringy cheese. If you want to add some more salt, you can add more salt, or pepper, or other spices. Make sure you give it a taste. That nice stringy cheese. That means it's good. Now, if it's too dry at this point, you can add a little bit of water if you wanted to. But it should stick together a little bit. And now we're going to get our peppers ready. You can use green peppers if you like. I find that my belly's not crazy about green peppers, so I like to use the colored peppers. I think they're a little bit sweeter. Like I said, I did buy these on sale. They can be expensive when they're not on sale, but I was able to get these on sale. Now we want to take the core out. I like to try to leave a little bit of the rounded edge. It helps keep the stuffing in. So you take the core out and you take the ribs out. And if you just pull the ribs out with your fingers, it's a lot easier. You don't have to worry about, accidentally slipping and stabbing the bottom of the pepper and putting a hole in it or stabbing your hand or anything. So you can just pull them out with your fingers. Now, I like my peppers, it's a little bit more than a blanch. It's about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes in the water. I don't like them cooked all the way. I like them to have a little bit of texture even when they come out of the oven. So at this point, I just want them to just start cooking. I try to use the peppers that have a flat bottom too, if you have a choice. It makes it easier when you stand them up in the pan. And I ended up using 5 peppers. If you wanted to cut them in half and stuff them that way, you could. They wouldn't need to cook as long then. But we're going to get them stuffed now. Now, I like a lot of filling in them. So take your time, spoon it in, and push it down. Fill them up really well. And they are hot, so be careful. I just put it on the towel. Makes it a lot easier to handle them. And it is easier if you put them in your hands to stuff them than try to get it while they're sitting in the dish. And that way you can give it a nice press in there and get it really packed in there well. Like I said, this is a whole meal, just one by itself. Makes a great meal. You got your veggies, you got your starch, you got your protein. I mean, between your meat and your cheese, you get 37 grams of protein in one pepper. That's pretty good. And by complete accident, I ended up using all the stuffing and not having any pepper left over. So it worked out well. And I finished filling that one in the pan because I needed the other hand to scrape things up. It gives them a nice texture inside and a good balance of everything. Now, so they don't dry out while they're cooking, I like to put a slice of tomato on top. And then that way, while they're cooking, the juice of the tomato sort of runs down into the stuffing. And then they can cook longer also. We will put cheese on these after they've cooked for a while. But I don't like to put the cheese on for the entire time of cooking because it usually ends up burnt. And I don't cover these with anything. I cook them in the oven uncovered. They cook for about 35 minutes at 350 degrees. You're basically cooking them to cook the pepper a little bit more. And just, so everything all the flavors sort of get married together. We put a slice on top of each one. And then they'll go in the oven, like I said, 350 degrees for 35 minutes uncovered. And then after that, bring them out. And now I put the cheese on it. You put the rest of that cup of the shredded mozzarella cheese on there. Now, if you would like your peppers a little bit softer, like completely cooked all the way through, I would cook them for 45 minutes the first time. Put the cheese on. I put them in for another 25 minutes. I would put them in for another 35 minutes. That extra 10 minutes isn't going to make any difference with the texture of the cheese or anything, but it will make sure that the pepper is cooked all the way through and very soft. And they'll go back in. The cheese will get all melty. And see, the cheese just starting to brown a little bit. So that extra 10 minutes, if you want to cook it longer, is not going to make any difference with the cheese. And I like to serve it with the lettuce. It just gives it a little more freshness and a little more crunch. Put some sauce on top. Just a red sauce. And they were so good. They really, really turned out well. Nice and juicy. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and I hope you give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe.